Hey everyone, and welcome back to another exciting part of our series. I'm so glad to have you here again. In the last video, we successfully built the About section where we highlighted some key aspects of who we are, our skills, and our achievements. Now, in today's video, we're moving on to something equally important, the Experience and Education section. This part is crucial because it gives us a chance to showcase our professional journey, our academic background, and the milestones that have shaped us as developers and designers. We'll make sure this section looks clean, structured, and impressive, giving potential employers or clients a clear idea of what we bring to the table. Before we dive into the code, if you're enjoying the series so far, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the upcoming parts. Also, I love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to leave a comment below. Let's get started and make this project even more awesome. As I said, in this part of the project, we're going to focus on building the Experience and Education section, which is one of the most visually engaging parts of the portfolio. The highlight of this section is a sleek and interactive timeline where we will showcase our professional journey and academic background in a clear, organized, and dynamic way. By the end of this section, we will have a clean, modern timeline that not only presents your background, but also creates a sense of flow and movement through subtle, smooth animations. So let's dive in and bring this timeline to life. The first thing that we have to do is to create a new component in the components folder. I'm going to call it experience.jsx. Then we have to create a new functional component using RAFCE shortcut. So as you can see, a new functional component is created. Let's get rid of import statement. Next, I'm going to go to the page.js file, and we have to import here newly created component. Let's duplicate this line of code and change the name of the component. We need here experience, and then we have to nest here the component. So let's insert experience. Then if we go to the browser, we will see here the content of the newly created component. All right. After that, I'm going to add here use client like we did it for the previous components. So we have already used use client several times, and I explained what it actually does, but anyway, I'm going to remind you, use client is important because next.js by default uses server-side rendering, but since this section will have client-side interactions like state changes and dynamic effects, we must specify that it should run on the client side. By adding use client, we guarantee that all JavaScript needed for dynamic behavior executes smoothly in the browser, ensuring our experience section functions perfectly for our visitors. Next, I'm going to get rid of this text from here, and we have to insert here heading, which we have created in the previous part. We need to insert here text attribute, and I'm going to specify the name of the heading. It's going to be experience and education. Then we have to import this component. I'm in the subcomponent. We have here heading subcomponent in this subfolder. Let's import it. We need subfolder, and then we need heading. Now, if we go to the browser, you will see here the heading, which is already styled, and we have the dynamic content. We no longer need here hard-coded titles of the section. All right, next I'm going to use an image component. We have already used this component in the previous parts. As you remember, the image component is a powerful built-in feature of next.js that helps you optimize images for performance. So I'm going to insert here image component. Then I'm going to import image from next image. as you know, we have to add to the image component a couple of different attributes. The first one is going to be source attribute. We have to specify here the path of the file. In this case, we need here /education.png. I mean this image here. Besides that, we need to add here alt attribute, and it's going to be experience image. Also, we need width and height. The width is going to be 400. As for the height, I'm going to make it 400 as well. So, as you remember, the width and height attributes define the dimensions of the image in pixels. By specifying the width and height, next.js can automatically calculate the correct aspect ratio and size of the image, ensuring it displays correctly on different devices. Now, if we go to the browser, we will find here the image that we have defined in our JSX. After that, I'm going to create a couple of different elements. We need div element. Then inside the div element, we need another div. Then again, another div element. And inside the div element, I'm going to open h1 heading element. It's going to be foundation and basics. This is a hard-coded heading. We'll change the content of the elements dynamically later. Next, we need paragraph. And inside the paragraph, we will have two span elements. Let's open the first one and insert here education. Then I'm going to duplicate this line of code and leave here education. Then after paragraph, I'm going to open div elements, in which I'm going to insert span with the content experience. Then after span elements, we need UL, which will include li elements with the text experience. Then after this closing div tag, I'm going to open span element with the text icon. Then after that, we need another div elements, and I'm going to insert here the date, I mean the year, let's say 2020. And finally, I'm going to open here div tag with the text timeline. All right, so actually it's the content of the section. We created all the elements, and now as a guest, we have to customize those elements. I'm going to add some classes, I mean Tailwind CSS classes to the elements. So let's start with the first development, which is the wrapper of the entire content. I'm going to add here a class name. We need padding at the top and bottom. So therefore we have to use py with the value 20. It means that we will have padding top equal to 80 pixels and also padding bottom with the same value. Then I'm going to create padding on the left and right sides as well. Let's use px with value 96. In this case, we will have padding equal to 384 pixels on the left and 384 pixels on the right side. All right, so that's it about the first development for now. Next, we have heading, and actually we don't touch heading because it is already customized. Then I'm going to customize the image elements. We have to change the position. Let's use class name. Then add here position, actually not position, but absolute. Then we need relative position for the parent element, which is div. So we need here relative. After that, we have to define top position for the image. So the top position will have a negative value. Therefore, we need minus top, then 4, which is equal to 16 pixels. I mean, we have here top position with a negative value, minus 16 pixels. Next, we have right position, and it's going to be equal to 96, which is 384 pixels. Besides that, I'm going to decrease slightly the opacity. Let's set opacity to 70. And finally, I'm going to add here breakpoint LG. For relatively smaller screen sizes, I'm going to hide the image at all. So we need here hidden. Okay, so that's it about the image. As you can see, it changed its position. Now it is placed on the right side inside the section. Next, we have div elements. and I'm going to add to it some classes. So first of all, I'm going to define width and height. The width is going to be full, equal to 100%, and we need height with the same value, full. Also, I'm going to add here some temporary background color in order to see clearly how this div element looks like. I'm going to add here bg red 500. Then let's go to the browser. So here we have the div element. I'm going to add some more classes to this element. So we need flexbox. I'm going to change the direction of the flex layout. In this case, we need flex column. We have to align the flex items vertically in a column. Then we need items, center, and also justify center. We are centering the flex items inside the flex container. Then I'm going to create some gap. We need gap y, and it should be equal to 10. Then I'm going to define gap for smaller screen size, for LG breakpoint. And on the breakpoint, gap y should be 20. And finally, I'm going to add here padding at the top and bottom. So we need padding y equal to 10, which is 40 pixels. All right, so that's the way how our div element looks. We can get rid of this temporary background color. Now I'm going to customize the next div elements, and let's start with width. I'm going to use here an arbitrary value. We need 600 pixels. Then I'm going to define the width on XL, on smaller screen size, or relatively small screen size. So width is going to be equal to 480 pixels. And then we need SM breakpoint. On the breakpoint, I'm going to set width to full. 100%. Like the previous element, I'm going to add here some temporary background color. We need BG red 500. Let's look at the results. So here we have the div element. I'm going to create some padding on the left and right side. So we need here px equal to 12. In this case, we have padding left and padding right equal to 48 pixels. Then I'm going to add here SM breakpoint, and padding x will be 0. And then we need position relative, because we have to move the elements to the left side with 300 pixels. We need here an arbitrary value. Okay, so actually, I think that we have to move these elements to the left side. So we need here minus left position. Okay, after that, I'm going to customize the next div elements. So let's add here class name. First of all, I'm going to use flexbox. We need flex, and then again, I'm going to change the direction of the flex layout. Let's use flex column. Next, I'm going to create some gap, some space. Next, I'm going to create some gap on the vertical axis. So we need here gap y. We need gap y because we have changed the direction of the flex layout. So we need gap y3. Then I'm going to make the element rounded, empty. Also, let's create border. And the border is going to be red, 300. Then I'm going to change the background. It's going to be white. Also create some padding. It should be equal to 4. So we will have padding equal to 16 pixels on all 4 sides. Also, I'm going to create some layer spacing using tracking white class. And then finally, I'm going to define the size of the font for smaller screen sizes. We need SM breakpoint and then text equal to SM. I'm going to get rid of this background color from these elements. We no longer need it. Okay, so as you can see, the div element looks nice. After that, I'm going to customize the h1 heading element. So let's add to the h1 class. First of all, we need text equal to XL, 28 pixels. Then we need SM breakpoint, and text is going to be equal to LG. Then we need font light. And also I'm going to change the color of the text. Let's use text gray 700. Okay, so the heading looks good. Next we have paragraph, which includes 2 span elements. So I'm going to add some classes to the paragraph. Actually, I'm going to add only one class here, text gray 800. And then I'm going to customize the span elements. So for the first span element, we need block, display block, and then font light. As for the second span element, I'm going to add here again block. Then we need padding on the left side. It's going to be equal to 2, which is 8 pixels. And then I'm going to add here font, which is going to be extra light. Okay, so the span elements are customized. Next we have div elements, which is placed right after paragraph. And this div element includes span elements, and then we have list. So I'm going to add to the div class. I'm going to change color of the text. It's going to be text gray 800. Then we have here span elements. Let's add to the span class name. And I'm going to add here font light. Then we have UL. I'm going to add here padding on the left side. It's going to be equal to 2, 8 pixels. After that, I'm going to customize li element, the list item. So let's add to it class name. I'm going to create some space at the top and bottom using margin Y. It's going to be equal to 1. And then we will have font extra light. So that's it about the list. Next we have icon. Right now we have here hard-coded text, and we will change this text with an actual icon later. So I'm going to add to the span class name. We will have here position absolute, and then we need position relative for the div element, which is the parent element of the icon. So we need here relative. Then I'm going to define the top position. It's going to be 20. Also, we need we need here top 20. Then we need left position with the value full, 100%. And also I'm going to change the color of the icon. Let's use text red 300. Okay, so that's the way how our icon looks right now. Next we have div element, which includes the year, the date. So let's add to the div element class name. We need again position absolute with top position equal to 20, 80 pixels. Then we will have left position full, 100%. Actually, let's define width. It should be equal to 14. Width 14 means that we have here width equal to 56 pixels. After that, I'm going to add here border. Then the color of the border is going to be gray 300. Also, I'm going to make the element fully rounded. We need rounded full. Let's look at the results. So here we have the dates. Actually, I'm going to transform this element into circle. Therefore, I'm going to add here aspect square. So in this case, the width and height will be equal. As you see, we have here width equal to 14. And once we set aspect ratio to 1/1, it means that the height and the width will be equal. So if we save and check the results, you will find here that we have the perfect circle. The next thing that we have to do is to place this text in the center of the circle. For that, we can use a couple of different ways. In this case, I'm going to use grid, then place items, center. So as you can see, the text is placed in the center. Next, I'm going to add here text red 400, and also I'm going to make font light. All right, so I think that's it about the dates. It looks pretty nice. And finally, we have to customize the last elements. Right now, I have here hard-coded text timeline, and actually it will be the vertical line which we have in this section. I'm in this line here. So I'm going to get rid of this text and add to the div elements and classes. First one is going to be position absolute. Then we will have width equal to 1, I mean 4 pixels. The height is going to be full, I mean 100%. Then we need rounded, full. And also we have to change the background color. It's going to be gray, 300. Let's check the results. Okay, so as you can see, we have here the vertical line. So that's it about the styling for now. Next, we have to make the timeline functional. Also, we have to add other parts of the timeline dynamically. Right now, we have here just one element. As you already know, we store the data of our projects in the index.js file. I'm going to open this file. So, like the previous parts, we're going to grab the data for this section from the index.js file. Before that, I'm going to describe a little bit what do we have here. We start with an array called experience data, which contains several objects. Each object represents a specific year or stage in our career, starting from year 1. For each year, we have a title that summarizes the focus or milestone for the period, such as Foundation and Basics or Advanced Learning and Early Experience. This title gives a snapshot of what that stage was about. Next, we have two key properties within each object, education and experience. The education property highlights the educational achievements or learning focus during that year, like earning a high school diploma, enrolling in an associate's degree program. The experience property is an array that lists the skills, projects, roles, or activities undertaken during the period. It captures the practical side of your journey, things like personal projects, freelance work, internships, full-time positions, and so on. This approach gives a clear, step-by-step view of how your career has evolved, highlighting both your educational background and hands-on experience. Let's go ahead and import this data from the index.js file. I'm going to go back to the experience.js file, and we have to import experience data array from assets. Actually, we need here slash. Besides that, I'm going to import arrow left icon, which we have already used in the about section. I mean this element here. So let's go ahead and import arrow left icon. Then I'm going to change this hard-coded text. I'm going to insert here arrow left icon. And if we go to the browser, you'll find here the arrow. Now we have to display the content of our timeline dynamically. For that, we need to modify the JSX and replace the hard-coded elements with the data coming from our experience data array. As you already know, this array is stored in the index.js file and contains all the information about our education and experience. First, we have to use the map method to loop through the experience data array. So right after here, I'm going to open curly braces, and then I'm going to use experience data followed by the map function. Then we need here a callback function with two parameters, data and I, which is the index number. So here map method allows us to iterate over an array and render its elements dynamically. We want to use this method to create a timeline entry for each object in the experience data array. To do this, we should wrap the content of our timeline item within a new map call. We will modify the div that contains the individual experience block and nest it inside the map method. This code snippet will iterate over each item in the experience data array. We pass in two parameters, data, which represents each object in the array, and I, which serves as the unique index for each element. So I'm going to grab this entire div element, and I'm going to pass it here. Then we need key, which will be equal to ID, and then we need $, curly braces, and I'm going to insert here I. So inside this map function, we use the values of each data object to populate the timeline dynamically. We use the key prop on the outer div to uniquely identify each block using key ID followed by the I index. It helps React efficiently render the list items. This key is important for performance optimization. So let's go to the browser. As you can see, now we have here 5 different blocks in our timeline, and now we have to change the contents of each block dynamically. Next, we have to go to the H1 heading element, where we previously hard-coded the title foundation and basics. We have to replace this with data.title, allowing the title to be dynamically set based on the value of each object in our experience data array. So we'll use these titles here. I'm going to get rid of foundation and basics. Then we need here data.title. Now if we go to the browser, you'll see that each block has different title. All right. After that, I'm going to modify the education section. In the p tag, where we have the span with the text education, we have to update the next line. Here we replace the hard-coded education with data.education. This line dynamically inserts the education information from each object in the array into the timeline. So let's go to the browser. As you can see, in each block we have different education. Next, we have to move to the experience section, which is currently hard-coded to display just one experience item. We need to make this part dynamic as well. Inside the div element, we have span and then UL element. So we have to change the UL to iterate over the experience array within each data object. We do this by adding another map method inside the UL element. I'm going to open curly braces, and then we have to insert here data.experience. Then we need map method with a callback function, and we have to insert here 2 parameters. The first one is going to be exp, which is experience, and then we need j. So here exp refers to each individual experience item, and j serves as a unique index for each experience. Now we have to insert the li element inside the map function. So let's grab this line of code and insert it inside the parentheses. We need to add here key prop, which will be equal to j. And then as the contents of the li element, I'm going to insert here exp. So we use exp inside the li tag to dynamically display each experience, replacing the placeholder text. We also add the key prop to each list item to help React keep track of each element. So if we go to the browser and check experience part of each block, you'll find that we have here different content for each experience item. Okay. Now we need to dynamically generate the dates for our timeline. Right now we have here hard-coded date 2020, and we have to make it dynamic. First, we have to create a variable called date to get the current year. So inside the function, I'm going to create a new variable. Let's call it date. It should be equal to new date object. And then I'm going to use one of the date methods called getFullYear. This line of code creates a new date object which contains all the information about the current date and time. By calling getFullYear method, we extract just the current year from this object. For example, if the current year is 2024, the date variable will hold that value. By using the current year dynamically, we make sure our timeline remains relevant and up to date without any manual adjustments in the future. To see clearly how this line of code works, I'm going to go to the browser and open console. So here I'm going to insert new date, followed by get full year. So as you can see, it returns the current year 2024. So that's the way how this method and new date object works. Next, we have to go back to the VS Code and we have to update the content of this element. So instead of this hard-coded 2020, we need curly braces. And I'm going to insert here date minus experience data dot length. Then we need plus I and plus 1. So this might look complex at a first glance, so let's break it down piece by piece. We are essentially creating a calculation that adjusts the year for each experience entry as we loop through the experience data array. So here date is the current year that we obtained from newDate.getFullYear method. Experience data.length gives us the total number of experience entries in our array. For example, if we have 5 entries, experience data.length will return 5. The I is the index from our map method, which starts at 0 for the first element. The I is the index from our map method, which starts at 0 for the first element, 1 for the second, and so on. This calculation is designed to adjust the year for each entry. Here is how it works. First, we subtract experience data.length from date. If the current year is 2024 and we have 5 items in experience data, this part calculates 2024 minus 5, which equals 2019. Then we add I to this result. As I increases with each iteration of the map method, the calculated year will increment. For the first entry, I is equal to 0. The result will be 2019 plus 0 plus 1, which gives us 2020. For the second entry, I is equal to 1. It becomes 2019 plus 1 plus 1, resulting in 2021, and so on. The plus 1 at the end ensures that we start with the first entry representing 1 year after the initial calculation. Essentially, this addition helps align our timeline entries with the correct years in a sequential manner. So in summary, by using this code, we ensure that the dates in our timeline automatically adjust based on the current year and the number of entries in our experience data array. This approach makes the timeline more dynamic and future-proof because no matter how many entries we add or what the current year is, the dates will always be calculated correctly. This is particularly useful if we want to update the project over time without manually changing each date. Now, if we go to the browser, you will find that we have correct years starting from 2020 all the way through 2024. All right, so everything works fine so far. Now we need to alternate the positions of our timeline blocks so that they appear on both the left and right sides of the vertical line. Currently, all blocks are aligned to the left. To create a more visually appealing layout, we will alternate the placement of these blocks by modifying the class name of the div element. So let's go through the modifications in detail and explain how this works. First, I'm going to write the code and then I will explain how it works. I'm going to find the div elements, this div element here, and I'm going to cut all the class names. Then I'm going to get rid of quotes and I'm going to insert here curly braces with template strings. So let's paste back class names. Then I'm going to get rid of this left position from here. Next we need $sign followed by the curly braces. And here I'm going to insert the conditional statement. The condition is going to be I modulus 2 equal to 0. Then we need ternary operator. So if this condition is true, we need the following classes: minus left 300 pixels. Then we need XL minus left 240 pixels. And then we need LG breakpoint. In this case, we need minus left to be 0. If the condition is false, then we need the following classes. Left will be 300 pixels. Then we need XL. In this case, left position is going to be 240 pixels. I mean the same value. Actually, we need an arbitrary value here. And finally, we need LG, which will be left equal to 0. All right, so let's go to the browser. As you can see, now the blocks are placed on the left and right sides. So now we have the correct layout of our entries. We are making use of a conditional operator within the class name string. This conditional logic will determine whether a block is placed on the left or the right side of the timeline based on the index I. So let's go ahead and break these down step by step. First, let's talk about the condition. In this case, we're using a ternary operator to decide which classes to apply based on the index I. The expression I modulus 2 equals 0 is what makes this dynamic. The modulus operator returns the remainder of a division. When we do I modulus 2, we are checking if the index is an even number. If the index is even, I mean I modulus 2 is equal to 0, the block will be positioned on the left side. If the index is odd, I mean if the condition is false, the block will be positioned on the right side. This is what enables the alternating pattern between left and right sides. The rest of the class names, I mean the classes with XL and LG breakpoints, they define the alignment for smaller screen sizes and for the responsiveness of the project. So the next thing that we have to do is to align the arrows and dates correctly. Let's go ahead and start with the arrows. We need to modify the class name of the left arrow icon to match the alternating layout of our timeline blocks. Just like we did before with the timeline blocks, this code will decide whether the arrow icon should point to the left or right based on the block's position. Let's go ahead and find the arrow icon. Then I'm going to grab those classes. We need again to open template literal, then paste back the classes. So before we add the conditional statement to the class name, we need to include the class minus translate y equal to 1/2. This class is important because it helps to vertically center the arrow icon within its containing block. The translate y class comes from Tailwind CSS, and what it does is move the element down by 50% of its own height. The translate utility in Tailwind allows us to adjust an element's position relative to itself rather than its parent. By using minus translate y 1/2, we are shifting the element upwards, effectively centering it along the y-axis. Now we need to update the class name in the following way. First of all, I'm going to get rid of left full class from here. Next, we need $, followed by the curly braces. And again, I'm going to insert here a condition, I modulus 2 equal to 0. If it is true, then we need the following classes, left full, then rotate with the value 180. And if this condition is false, then we need just right full. If we go to the browser, then you will see that arrows are aligned correctly. So just like with the timeline blocks, we use the modulus operator to check if the index I is even or odd. The ternary operator then decides which set of classes to apply based on the outcome of the check. When I modulus 2 equals 0 is true, meaning the index is even, we have left full and rotate 180. The first class positions the icon completely to the left of its containing element. In Tailwind CSS, left full moves the element to 100% of the parent's width, pushing it to the left edge. Then we have rotate 180. This rotates the arrow icon 180 degrees, effectively flipping it to point towards the right. This is necessary because the arrow needs to point towards the block when the block is on the left side of the timeline. Then if the condition is false, meaning the index is odd, we have right full. This class moves the icon to the far right of its containing element, placing it on the right edge. This is used when the timeline block is on the right side, so the arrow appears as if it's pointing towards the block. By including this dynamic class logic, we are able to alternate the position and rotation of the arrow based on whether the block is on the left side or on the right side. Alright, now we have to take care of the dates, and we have to do that in the same way. Right now, as you can see, the positions of the dates are messed up. Some of them are placed near the vertical line, some of them are placed on the right side, and so on. So we have to fix that problem, and we have to use the same technique. Let's go ahead and find the date, and in the same way I'm going to grab the class names, then I'm going to open again template literals, then place the classes back. Like the arrow icon, we have to add here minus translate while with the same value 1/2. So this class is crucial for vertically centering the date within its container. As we discussed in the previous case, this class shifts the element upwards by 50% of its own height, effectively centering it along the y-axis. In the case of our date element, this ensures it aligns perfectly within its block on the timeline, regardless of where the block is positioned. Next, we have to add here again $sign with curly braces. Then we need the same condition, I modulus 2 equal to 0. If this condition is true, then we need here left full, then minus translate x and the same value 1/2, and then we need LG breakpoint. Left position is going to be 1/2. If the condition is false, then we need, let's copy this class, so if the condition is false, then we need here right full, then translate x without the minus sign. As for the LG breakpoint, we need right position. Let's go to the browser. So as you can see, we have here a tiny issue. Those two dates are placed on the right side again. So let's go back to the VS Code. Actually, the classes are correct here. So we have to get rid of this class from here. Now let's go to the browser. So as you can see, the problem is fixed. The only issue that we have here is that those dates are placed behind the vertical line. We can fix that using the index property. Let's set the index to, let's say, 10. And also I'm going to change the background. Let's make it white. So now everything looks good. Okay, so let me explain how this code works. Again, this code uses a conditional check to determine whether the block should be positioned on the left or right side of the timeline. Let's break this down. For even index blocks, we use left full minus translate x and then left position with LG breakpoint. Left full positions the date element at the far left edge of its containing block. Then we have minus translate x. It shifts the date element to the left by 50% of its own width, ensuring that it's centered over the block's left edge. This adjustment prevents the date from overflowing beyond the left edge of the timeline. And then we have LG breakpoint with the left position 1/2. It comes into play on relatively smaller screens and places the date in the middle of the block, giving us more flexibility in the overall layout. For odd indexed blocks, we have right full, then translate x, and again LG breakpoint with the right position 1/2. So right full positions the data element at the far right edge of its containing block, then translate x, moves the date element to the right side by 50% of its width, ensuring that it is centered over the block's right edge, and then we have LG breakpoint with the right position. It is applied at the LG breakpoint to position the date in the middle of the block for smaller screens. Alright, now that we have completed the layout for our timeline section, it looks great. We have carefully placed all the elements, aligned everything perfectly, and made sure it adapts beautifully on both the left and right sides. Now we have to make this timeline come to life. It is time to make it truly interactive and dynamic by adding some smooth animations using Framer motion. Animations will give our timeline that extra level of polish, making it not only functional but also visually appealing. So let's dive into the fun part and add those motion effects to make our timeline stand out. The first thing that we have to do is to import motion from the Framer motion library. So we have to add here import statement. Then we have to insert here motion, and we have to import motion from Framer motion. As you remember, in Framer motion, motion is the magic ingredient that allows us to animate elements in our React components by simply replacing regular HTML elements like a div or a span with their motion counterparts. We gain access to all of Framer motion's powerful animation features. Essentially, it gives us full control to make our elements fade in, slide around, bounce, and more. Without motion, we wouldn't be able to implement the kind of dynamic animations we are aiming for in our timeline. Now that we have imported motion, the next step is to replace the div elements in our timeline blocks with a motion div. This is crucial because using motion div allows us to apply the animation properties to the div directly. So let's go ahead and add motion to this div element here. I'm going to select both opening and closing tags. Let's add motion. So now within the motion div, we need to define some attributes to set up our animation. First, we add here initial, and I'm going to insert here opacity equal to 0. Then we need x equal to I, modulus 2 equal 0. We are using here the same condition. So if the condition is true, we need here minus 80. And if it is false, then we need 80. So this line specifies the initial state of our elements before they come into view. We set opacity to 0 to make the blocks invisible initially. The X property is where things get interesting. We want the blocks to slide in from the sides, so we use a conditional check I modulus 2 equals 0. If it is true, then the value is minus 80, and if it is false, then we have 80. So what this does is that for even index blocks, the X position is set to minus 80, making them start from the left. For odd index blocks, it is set to 80, making them start from the right. This way the blocks will slide in from alternating directions, giving us a more dynamic timeline effect. Next we have to add the while in view attribute. So here I'm going to add while in view, and then we need here opacity equal to 1, and X will be 0. So this attribute tells our component what to do once it comes into the viewport. Here we set opacity to 1, which means that the element will fade into full visibility. We also set X to 0, which brings the element to its final resting place in the layout. Essentially, this is the end state of our animation, where the blocks smoothly slide into their proper position. So now we can already test the animation. I'm going to refresh the page. So as you can see, the blocks are sliding from the left and right sides. Now, once we scroll up, they are sliding again, and we don't need that. We have to run the animation only once. So for that, I'm going to add here another attribute, and it is viewport. I'm going to insert here once and make it true. So this is a really handy property that makes sure the animation runs only when the element enters the viewport for the first time. It prevents the animation from replaying every time the user scrolls, which can sometimes feel repetitive or distracting. So now, if we scroll down and then scroll up, the animation will no longer run. Okay, so finally, we have to add the transition attribute to control the animation's timing and also the behavior. I'm going to add here transition. Then we need duration. It's going to be 0.7. Also, I'm going to add here type. And it's going to be spring. As for the stiffness, I'm going to make it 50. So here we set duration to 0.7 seconds, which is how long the animation will take to complete. The type is set to spring, which gives the animation a smooth, natural movement as if it's on a spring. This makes the sliding effect look more organic and engaging. The stiffness value controls how tight the spring effect is. A lower stiffness value like 50 makes the animation softer and bouncer. So let's go to the browser, then reload the page and scroll down. So now, as you can see, we have here nice and cool effect. Okay, so everything works perfectly. Now finally, we have to animate the timeline. I mean the vertical line. Once we scroll down, it should appear with dynamic animations. First, we need to bring in the additional hooks from Framer Motion that we will be using. In this case, we need to add uScroll. We can track the scroll position of our timeline, and also we can add here uSpring. It will allow us to smooth out the scrolling animation, adding a more fluid motion to our timeline's vertical line. With these hooks in place, we will be able to create a scroll-linked animation that feels responsive and engaging. Next, we need to set up a reference to the container that we want to monitor for scroll events. We will use the useRef hook to achieve this. So I'm going to import useRef from React. Then I'm going to create new variable, and I'm going to call it container ref. It should be equal to useRef hook, and as the default value, I'm going to insert here null. So the container ref is essential because it gives us a way to identify the specific element that we want to track for scrolling. In this case, it is the container holding our timeline blocks. By assigning this reference to the container, we can use it with the useScroll hook to precisely monitor how far we have scrolled through the timeline. So we need to select this div element here, and we have to add here ref, which would be equal to container ref. Now we have to bring in the uScroll hook to track the scroll progress of our container. So I'm going to add here variable. I mean, we have to destructure variable scroll y progress. It should be equal to useScroll hook. And I'm going to insert here an object, which will have two properties, target property with the value container ref, and then we will have offset, in which we will have two values, start 95%, and then we need end twice. Okay, so let's break down this code. useScroll returns an object containing scroll y progress, which gives us a value between 0 and 1. It represents how far we have scrolled through the target element. We pass an object to useScroll with two properties, target and offset. The target is set to container ref, which means we are monitoring the scroll progress of the container element we referenced earlier. The offset property takes an array of two values. We have start 95% and end twice. This offset tells Framer Motion to start tracking the scroll when 95% of the container is visible, and to finish tracking when the bottom of the container reaches the end of the viewport. Essentially, this configuration ensures that our scroll-based animation will occur smoothly as the user scrolls through the timeline. Next, we need to link this scrolling effect to the vertical line. So to do that, we first replace the div element with the motion div. So let's go ahead and scroll down. We have here the div elements, which we should transform into motion div. Then I'm going to add here a couple of different attributes. The first one is going to be initial. We need here scale y equal to 0. Then I'm going to add here style attribute. And I'm going to insert here scale y again. And as the value, I'm going to add here scroll y progress. So here is what's happening in this code snippet. By using motion div, we can animate the vertical line as it scrolls. We set the initial state to scale y 0, which makes the line completely collapsed vertically when the component first loads. Then in the style attribute, we use scale y to control the vertical scaling of the line. We set it to scroll y progress, which means that as the user scrolls, the vertical line will grow proportionally to the scroll position. This creates a neat visual effect where the line appears to grow along with the scrolling motion, enhancing the timeline's animation. So if we go to the browser, then reload the page and scroll down. Actually, we are not getting here any animations. So actually we're getting the animation, but it works in the wrong direction. So in order to fix that, we need to add here one class, and it is origin top. Let's go back and reload the page. Now, as you can see, the line is growing from top to bottom. So it means that everything works great. Now, to make this animation feel even smoother, we have to use Spring Hook. Let's go back to the VS Code. And here I'm going to create a new variable. It's going to be scroll y. It should be equal to uSpringHook. Then we need here scroll y progress and an object in which we will have stiffness equal to 200 and then damping equal to 20. So what we are doing here is creating a new spring animation using uSpring. We pass scroll y progress as the first argument to uSpring, which links it to the scroll progress. The second argument is an object where we define the properties of the spring, stiffness and damping. The first property determines how resistant the spring is to being stretched. A higher value would make the animation more rigid, while a lower value would make it more elastic. The second property, damping, controls how bouncy the spring is. Finally, we have to replace scroll y progress down below with scroll y. Now, let's go to the browser, reload the page. Now, as you can see, we have here this nice and cool animation with our timeline. Once we scroll down, the vertical line grows, and once we scroll up, it disappears. Okay, so that's it. By following these steps, we've successfully added an engaging scrolling animation to the timeline's vertical line. So in this part, we went from laying out the structure to dynamically loading data, and finally, we added some stunning animations using framer motion to bring our timeline to life. Now it feels interactive and polished, enhancing the overall look and feel of our website. If you enjoyed this video and learned something new, please give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to click the bell icon so you get notified whenever I post a new video. Also, let me know in the comments how your project is coming along. Your feedback and thoughts are always appreciated. In the next part of our series, we'll be diving into building the skill section, where we will showcase all the technical abilities that make up our developer toolkit. It's going to be another fun and engaging build, so stay tuned. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.